Good evening, everyone. Welcome back. Tonight we are talking about totalism, totalitarianism, woke, and Islam. The channel's growing. We're nearly at 15,000, so thanks all of you for supporting the channel. And of course, allow myself to introduce myself. As a very famous agent once said, because of the growth of the channel, I should probably start formalizing certain things, like an introduction at the beginning. But yeah, for those who don't know me, my name is Lloyd de Jongh. My name is continuously spelled badly, but yeah, it's pronounced de Jongh. So I'm an ex-security expert. I have over a decade of Middle East experience. And on my channel, I talk about the crossroads of Christian history, faith, ethics, and ideology from a Christian perspective. And of course, tonight we're going to be discussing this particular intersection of totalitarianism, totalism, woke, and Islam. Right, so in the chat we've got Shivilibi. Good grief. Yeah, how do I say that? Shivilib? Andrew Martin, welcome. Good to see you. Anna64, you've made some very interesting comments. You have very wide knowledge. I've seen. And XYZ, good to see you. Welcome. And Sheikh Khalifa, hey, great to see you. And Phil Watts, great. Yaya, Sergeant Grinch, Dr. Obvious. Joining alive, great to have you. Thank you. Michael, welcome. Mariusz Moisha, greetings. Yeah, you Polish? Which part of Poland are you in? Roseanne Rossi, welcome. And Cassandra Ball, good to see you. All right. Tonight, of course, we are talking about totalism, which picks up from one of my previous talks from last week. So, Karan Jeannie Alon, welcome. Good to see you from Israel. Yeah. So this is the topic for tonight. Hopefully the text is large enough to see. I need to leave some space on the right for additional notes as they come up. Yeah, Podlasha, Northeastern. Okay, I was out in Podlasha a couple of months ago. All right. Yeah, I went to see a friend for a weekend in Białystok. He works for the police. Yeah, but really great to have someone from Poland, or more people from Poland on the channel. In fact, there's someone else from Poland I need to talk to, but I've got a good friend in Bitom as well. Met him here on the channel, so I see him on a regular basis. Greetings from America. Ernesto, welcome. Jack Vincent Fidelis, great. All right, guys. Now, I mentioned this paper, and we're going to be talking about this one, as well as the book that I discussed in my previous talk on the eight psychological principles of totalism and totalitarianism. And this source here is Antonia Elorza from the University of Madrid. Your parents are Polish. That's very interesting, Anna. Jack Vince from Nigeria. Great. Awesome. Africa. Yeah. So, understand this is an early version of the paper. It was published much earlier, but then this was a reprint of it, and there were some changes made, and the publisher actually gave me an early copy, an advanced copy. And so understand English is not his first language. So I've left most of the paper alone. I've changed one or two words where the word was really weird. So some of this was written in Spanglish. I've had to make some slight adaptations. But rather than change the text, except in like one or two places where I changed a word, a single word, I will have notes on the right-hand side to just explain what he's trying to say. This was before final editing. This was just the original draft, all right, in his Spanish English. To start with, to define terms. Totalitarianism and totalism are similar. They're not exactly the same thing, right? Totalitarianism, we know. Totalism is a new word. However, this is extremely appropriate to what we're facing today in the woke movement, as well as in the Islamic encroachment we're seeing currently in Europe and America. Hello from Montenegro, where my favorite person called Lloyd de Jongh was an security expert and has a YouTube channel. Great, yeah. Good to hear that, Connor. Right. Now, they're similar in that they both involve extreme government control and influence. So in that sense, they have a great similarity in their political domain. However, there's a distinction between the two. It's not necessarily that subtle. Well, yeah, maybe it is a subtle distinction. Totalitarianism is a political system where the government has absolute control over all aspects of public as well as private life. This control can extend to the economy, the media, education, even individual thoughts and beliefs. Example totalitarian regimes include Nazi Germany under Hitler, the Soviet Union under Stalin, North Korea under Kim Jong-un, yeah, And any guy that's married will explain to you about the oppressive totalitarian regime he lives under that's run by his wife, right? At least I think that's how it works. Okay, on the other hand, totalism is a broader term. It encompasses ideology, right? And it's a movement that is characterized by the belief in absolute obedience to a particular set of values or principles. Now, totalism, what you have is social control, political control, right? Financial control, economic, and so on, legal control within the totalitarian space. Whereas under totalism, you're talking about mind control. This is literal brainwashing. That's one of the major differences here. So they want absolute obedience to a particular set of values or principles. That would be social justice. That would be, woke, right? So you must give absolute obedience or you will be destroyed, right? Trans women are women. And if you disagree, well, we're going to ban you. We're going to make you lose your job. We're going to hound you out of town. We're going to reduce you to poverty, right? So totalism can exist outside of institutionalized government control. It can manifest in numerous spheres of society, such as religious or cultural movements. We're seeing this today, the BLM, woke, Islam, as we see it now, where strict adherence to their ideologies is demanded. Father Bob would agree, he would, because Bob is now your uncle. Totalism can be seen in extremist religious groups, in cults, and also radical political movements. And in fact, the difference between them is often, you can't really tell that there is a difference between them. So, the author writes here, one day in January of '87, during my first visit to Cuba, a lifeguard watching over a beach close to Havana gave me an explanation regarding the difference between two sorts of dictatorial regimes. He said the Eastern European kind and the Castro variation. He said there, as well as here in Eastern Europe and in Cuba, we are all screwed over, but over there, at least, it is enough to simply obey what the party and state demand. Whereas here, you have to attend the popular assemblies and officially ask for them to do to you what they want. So you have to go along and you have to ask them nicely, please screw me over, as he's stating here. So you have to want it. You have to be part of this whole thing, right? You have to submit completely and you have to want this. That's insane. Right. It is the dividing line, one that is often difficult to discern between traditional totalitarianisms and totalism. And the totalist category is one in which, in either a real or fictitious way, it is a militant collective. So you've got a collectivist Borg. Let's just call it the Borg. And they are very dedicated to their task. They are willing to utilize force. They're willing to utilize manipulation. They adopt or promote decisions, thus eliminating any true pluralism. So you've got this rigorous control from the top, right? And this will be explained as we go. It'll become clearer as we go. So let me just make that slightly smaller. So the leader or a small directive elite, whether Fidel Castro, Ayatollah Khomeini, or an organization like the ETA, he uses here the Basque terrorist organization, they present themselves as the personification of a collective protagonism, right? So this is revolutionaries, believers, hardcore nationalists. Think of the BLM, think of the woke, right? And they transfer the responsibility of exercising the means for control and punishment from the state. So the state doesn't execute punishments on dissenters, right? This right to visit punishment, to visit retribution on dissenters is given to the group, to the Borg, to the woke. Think of this. Think of BLM. 6 months worth of burnings, 30 plus dead people, most of those black people, right? People of color, as they say, right? You're looking at fires, right? Fiery but mostly peaceful riots where thousands of cars were damaged, gutted, buildings destroyed, right? Fires, businesses destroyed, people's livelihoods destroyed. Why? The government did nothing. Why? Because if this is a totalist government, like look at America, then they are acting, doing the bidding, the will of the government. And this right of doing punishment on those who will not obey them and utilizing violence to make the rest obey, this right is passed from the government to the rioters, because the rioters are doing the will of the government. Do you understand how that is? Do you understand where we are today? we are looking, the US government, the Democratic Party, is a totalist organization. Does that make sense? Does that logic make sense given this here, right? So leaders like Fidel Castro, Khomeini, or organizations like ETA, the Basque terror group, are the face of a larger group, okay? So these leaders are the face of a larger group of revolutionaries, believers, or hardcore nationalists, right? And they will pass on the responsibility of controlling and punishing others to the group. So the BLM is not breaking the law. The BLM is carrying out the will of the leaders. They're carrying out the will of the government. So they believe that this collective group's actions are necessary to maintain power and authority. So they have to make sure that the crazy ones, the radicals, the people blocking the streets, the people blocking the airport, the people that are making sure that the bridges can't be crossed, that the crossroads, the intersections, the tunnels are blocked, they're simply doing what the government actually wants. That's why they get served coffee. That's why they get warm blankets. That's why the police give them back rubs, and give them foot rubs to make sure that they're okay, because they're actually doing what the leadership wants. The leadership maintains control. And this is very much like the Sharia. It is a cult, Andrew Martin. Exactly. This is exactly the Sharia, and he will actually talk about this. I noticed this, and then he actually says it later explicitly. This is the Sharia dictate of commanding the right and forbidding the wrong. In other words, you have to force the Sharia on everyone, and you've got to forbid anything from happening that goes against the Sharia. The Sharia is something imposed on everyone, not just Muslims, right? So in other words, he says here, right, and the masses of people crowding around Castro as he gave an inspirational speech at the beginning of the Cuban Revolution, he cried out to the wall, demanding the execution of the followers of Batista, right? He says, these claims, these calls for violence are the expressions of the political and psychosocial elements that are characteristic of totalist thinking. So these examples show the strong political and social influence that totalistic thinking can have on people. It has psychological control. So it's politics, psychology, and religion are mixed into one very toxic cocktail. So the concept of totalism was elaborated by the psychiatrist and historian Robert Lifton. The book is called Thought Reform and the Psychology of Totalism. And this is about the modifications introduced by Mao Zedong to traditional communism. So this is actually Marxism with Chinese characteristics. Now, when you look at the BLM and you look at the woke movement today, it is Marxism with American characteristics, with certain, shall we say, gay characteristics. So it is Marxism. It is this Gnostic idea, the Semitic idea, but with certain characteristics of the culture that it's in. And of course, you go from Marx to Mao, and from Mao, those ideas evolve, they adapt, and now they're in America, now they're in Europe. Second Amendment, the cure, yeah. So totalism is a cult, and the left-wing was far more violent and satanic. Yes, that is correct. Okay, so the distinction between totalitarianism and totalism does not exclude a high degree of convergence. There are overlaps. There's also some dissimilarity, but there is certainly an overlap, right? So totalitarianism and totalism involve strong control and influence by the government. So they do involve strong control and influence by the government. In the one case, the government's doing the thing. In the other one, the government allows the thing, right? All of the burning, all of the violence you're seeing today, all of the Palestinian marches, this is being allowed. If the government sends its troops out to beat people up, that's one thing. But when the government allows this blob to go out there and harm civilians, shut down malls, shut down airports, shut down bridges, shut down highways, right? Shut down overpasses. They're allowing the violence. Do you understand the slight distinction? The one is doing it, the other one's allowing it. Right? Now, of course, the PRC, People's Republic of China, and Cuba, these are examples of this. All right? Now, totalism can be dispensed with regarding the formation and development of the charismatic leadership factor and monopoly of power. So let me see. In these situations, what he says here is, totalism is not necessary when it comes to developing a strong and popular leader. So a strong political leader emerges, and totalism isn't necessary for that. They've got mechanisms for creating this within the culture already, right? The totalitarian regimes have their methods, right? So they can develop a government that has all the political power, in a fascist or communist regime. However, in cases like they mention here, Basque nationalism or Islamic movements, totalism can and will be present, but they don't necessarily have the same goals of seizing political power. So the process of seizing political power is not necessarily the same thing as when they are out there creating social control, right? So they use it as a means to shape the society. So generally speaking, totalism is used as a means to shape the society, to create the perfect utopian society and to get you to stand in line. So let's look at, so they speak here of, it should be noted that its protagonism corresponds to the actions of a community of believers. So now you're dealing with a community of believers. These are true believers. These people really believe the nonsense they have fed, whether they be those of a sanctified nationalism or as adherents to a theocracy, right? Hamas, in which the rule of Allah reigns supreme. I believe the government should reflect God. God is a king, heaven is a kingdom, country should be a kingdom. And that actually technically is the Catholic view, oddly enough, when you look at the way the Catholic doctrine views government, so that you've got, which talks about a moral government based on certain laws, right? Not a theocracy, but one that is derived from good judgment based on good morals, good laws based on good morals. But then you look at the Luther method of doing it. Luther was creating a theocracy. Luther created a theocracy, and he created a church that was managed by the government, a government church. So then you've got the anatomy of totalism. So for Emilio Gentile, the totalitarian parties that emerged at the end of the First World War and the political systems that were born are a basis from which to define a new form of political dominance put in place by revolutionary movements, right? They've got a very fundamentalist concept of political theory, and they will seek power and they will seize power combining legal and illegal means. Now, the government can keep its hands clean. They can say, well, we didn't do that. We're following the law, you know. But the totalists, the cultists out there, they are the illegal means. They are the ones, they're allowing this illegality to go on, and the illegality shapes society. Obey us or we'll burn your business down. You see, it's a very useful tool for the government to utilize. So they want to transform the regime and create a new state founded on the basis of a single party. And here, the EU, the single party, the Democrats, the single party, and of a terrorist policed system. Fascinating. You're talking two of the best researchers and two of the best professors on the topic in the world, psychologists in the world discussing this, and then coming to these conclusions. And you're creating a terrorist police state, right? And the latter being an instrument of permanent revolution against internal enemies. Permanent revolution will be Protestants forever. Think about that. Protestants, right? Okay, so after you win, do you still have to protest? Can you stop protesting now? No, because the enemy still exists. Who is the enemy? The Catholic Church. We're still protesting. Because the enemy is not dead, we have to kill it. Understand the concept of the Protestant movement is, in a sense, totalist. It's in permanent revolution against the other thing, right? And of course, if the gay movement or if the woke movement, the trans movement is totalist, well, they're in a permanent revolution against you because you aren't one of them. Therefore, they will always have an enemy to fight. Do you understand? The fight can never go away. That explains the mechanism for why they just don't stop, why they just go on to the next problem. They just keep inventing problems. So the consensus, as a result of consensus, the totalitarianism combines the permanent recourse of the use of force, and they will always use force, of a political religion oriented towards the creation of a new man. A political religion oriented towards the creation of a new man. You had the Soviet man, right? You had the perfect socialist man and woman. You had the Übermensch, right? That's under the Soviets and Marx and Lenin. Then you had the Übermensch under the Nazis. And of course, in Islam, you've got the Insan al-Kamil, which was Muhammad. And of course, the Sufis also then become the perfect man. And then, of course, you've got the spiritual alchemy, right? Which dates from before. You have the spiritual alchemy of the Freemasons and others to develop themselves into the perfect man. Eternal revolution is for progress, immanentizes the eschaton. Yeah, just put that in English for me because I can never remember exactly how that is supposed to be translated. Satan was a rebel. Rebellion is not necessarily a revolution. Yeah, maybe that's a distinction that doesn't have much of a difference. Okay, now let's continue. So, totalitarianism implies a radical transformation of political relations, giving full priority to political power. Right? Remember the whole feminist movement? Someone mentioned it earlier. where the feminists came out with the view that the personal is political. Everything becomes politicized, and everything is political today. In the case of totalism, politics are not in any way absent, but their role is rather to cover the totalistic movement, violence included. So the politicians give cover to the totalists, right? BLM, anyone? Okay, and this allows the politicians to maintain a prominent position. This is like their jackboots, they work for them. So it is the search for hegemony in the heart of society that constitutes its axis of action. And they want to overturn the value system and eliminate pluralism. I'll define pluralism later, but that means a society with choice, a society with difference. What they want to do is remove the choice, remove the difference. You cannot send your kids to X school. You cannot send your kids to that type of school. They must go to the government school. You cannot homeschool them. You can only have this one kind of healthcare where you have to take the jab. You can only, etc. Eliminating choice. Now, when I used to work with people, teaching them about criminal violence and how it occurs and how it's planned and plotted on a personal level, when you got into a situation like a narrowing funnel where your choices were being removed, that was evidence of a crime taking place. Right? When you're in a place, like let's say there's entrances. You're in a place and there's entrances and you see a guy, suspect looking guy, covers an entrance and you get a feeling like something's wrong here. Then you see another one or two guys loitering at the other entrance. And if you want to go out through that door, they've got you. And then you've seen it in the movies all the time. The guy turns around, there's a guy covering the entrance. He looks over there, there's a guy covering the entrance. He looks at the other entrance, there's another guy covering the entrance. They're taking away your choices. They're funneling you into a particular place and you're in a trap. When this happens, when your choices are being removed, that is evidence of a crime. So this tells me this is evidence of a crime, right? So they want only one ideology, one political system, one set of thinking, right? So the power lurks in the shadows and the battle is waged upon the field of social psychology, right? Eat the bugs, bigot, right? Trans women are women, bigot, right? So now Lifton talks about the 8 criteria, the 8 psychological themes common to all manifestations of the ideology of totalism. Control of the media, mystic manipulation, the demand for purity, confessional cult, the sacred science, the use and function of language, the manipulation and control of language, doctrine taking precedence over individuals, the beliefs, the ideas above people, right? For instance, take the Jehovah's Witnesses. We don't allow you to do blood transfusions. Well, what happens? Their children die. Why? Because doctrine above people. Ideas above people. The beliefs above people. The people don't matter. We don't follow X belief. No medical blood transfusions. Kids die. Well, too bad. Because the idea came first. Do you understand? Ideas above people. Your life does not matter. 8. The dispensation of existence. They're going to genocide the gays. They're going to genocide the trans. The earth is going to end in a fireball. Oh my God, the ice is melting. The polar bears are going to die. Understand? That's the dispensation of existence. They're going to kill us. We're going to die because, and we have to do something. Welcome, Lilo Main. Welcome, Corey Johnson, Samar Kumar. Right. I highly recommend people studying Enver Hoxha Albania communist regime. Okay. I spent 3 months there last year. Even your haircut was inspected by police. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's actually the same in North Korea. Yeah, you have to have a government mandated haircut. Yeah. We are talking about psychology. I think there's a correlation between the woke movement, amongst others, that are being led by narcissists. There's a very interesting, yeah, this is exactly that. And of course, 8, of course, is the fear of the annihilation of existence. And number 9 is please press the like button and share and tell your friends. Okay, so like, share, and subscribe is number 9. He definitely says that. I might have left that line out, but please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And if you'd like to support the channel, there's a link on the screen at my Coffee link, as well as you've got links in my description if you'd like to support what I do. So if you get any value from it, I would obviously very much appreciate the support I get from everyone already. So welcome, Bernadette. Michael Lawler, hey there. Okay, so in his opinion, the basic characteristic of totalism has had the greatest influence. Okay, so the most powerful influence they have is control of the media. This is their most powerful tool. And of course, the reason they control the media is to establish the monopoly of communication between individuals and the outside world. They don't want your voice to wake the other guy up with facts. They don't want you confusing him with the facts because they've got that on lockdown, right? So which is why your voice is necessary. Speak the truth. Go on social media, challenge the lies, provide facts, provide an alternative, because you cannot just say that that's bad. You've got to give the guy that's trying to get away from the bad thing an alternative, something better to turn to, okay? So you've got to go from, okay, Satanism's bad, but why is it bad and what do I offer that's better? Do you understand? Atheism is bad. What do I have that's better and why? You need to have something better. So the book 1984 is a good example. Here they want to create a social ambiance which everything corresponds to the given truth, right? This is the truth of the Sharia, what the scholars tell you is true. So, to such an extent that mystical manipulation comes into play, provoking behavior and emotions dictated by the ruling group that are made to feel obligatory. Okay? You must like the bugs. Okay? It's a mystical imperative, as it were, that wraps itself around institutions of power. It's a spell, right? This is why you're seeing the, I mean, come on, you saw that the FAA or something, or whatever, or one airline is now going, in its DEI initiative, it's going to find jobs for people with severe psychological and mental problems. I don't want people with severe psychological and mental issues fixing and flying planes. But, well, that's, otherwise you want to be inclusive, don't you? So the crazy people need to be allowed to fix your engines, right? So these individuals must act and think assuming the validity of the system. They have to obey the system. This is mental control, not just control in terms of government dictate, but they want to get inside your mind. The third characteristic is the division of the world into pure and impure, us and them, the absolute good and the absolute evil. That's why Trump is evil. That's why Trumpians are evil. The Republicans are evil. Conservatives are evil. Christians are evil. There's no nuance, right? It's a polarization. It invades individuals with the sense that all of the impurities of the world come from outside. It's your fault. Are you white? Well, it's your fault because you're impure, right? So this explains how in Mao's China, personal confessions known as struggle sessions were used to get rid of feelings of impurity. You had to confess. Think about it. They are stealing a religious idea here, right? They don't like Christianity, but they're willing to strip ideas from it, steal from the religion to feed their own particular ideology, right? And they've also got totalistic dogma is invariably presented as a sacred science. It's not a dogma. It's not an ideology. It's the truth. It's science. Okay? It's science. The polar bears are dying. Okay, they're not, but the polar bears are dying, and the earth has a fever, and the science is settled, and don't question the science because it's not science. It's an ideology, right? And so even to the extent that the assumed ideas become made in God, it's a religion. These are pushing religious ideas, right? Okay, so of course the Mao will have his red book. You've got the Quran. Okay, understand they'll have their little books like Das Kapital, Karl Marx. You get the idea? It's a religious model. That's what they're using, but they're abusing it for their own purposes. Hi, Lloyd and all the brothers and sisters. Just wondering if you knew there were adverts midstream. Keep up the great enlightening work. Thanks. Yeah. I've suspected the same thing about the woke movement. What are you referring to when you say PR? I have no idea what they mentioned. Mentioning the title of your videos in comment section always gets my comment shadow banned. That's odd. Okay. State-sanctioned lawlessness where government is a crime syndicate. Correct. Yes, that would be it. At least according to this paper, yes, that would exactly be the case. When your choices are restricted to the point that you don't actually have any real choices, then you're looking at something that's trying to impose upon you in a way that is unethical at the very least, and criminal. And at worst, criminal. Right. So the language employed should be free of problematic implications. So what they want is language that is very well controlled, reduced to common phrases and stereotypical formulas with emotional charge that reinforces, and what is odd, he calls it the Manichaean nature of the thoughts entailed. In other words, he ties it back to Gnosticism, Manichaean Gnosticism. Manichaean Gnosticism is tied up extensively with things like the Manichaean movement is very much part of Islam. Sorry. You can tie it into Islam. You can tie it into Martin Luther and John Calvin. And you can tie it into numerous other ideologies. But he's saying here that this Manichaean nature, this is a Gnostic movement based on a dualism of good and evil, with no way to reconcile. Therefore, there is no forgiveness. There is only destruction of the enemy. So they have common phrases. What kind of common phrases? Eat the bugs. You will own nothing. You'll be happy. Understand? These are simple phrases, right? Jesus was a Muslim. Do you understand? These basic phrases, that's simple phrases. Okay? Israel's committing genocide, right? Trans women are women. These are the kinds of phrases that are simply pumped into them. These are simple, stereotypical phrases and that have a very strong emotional charge. Yeah, sorry, I'm not sure why I did that today, but yeah. Okay, so R.J. Lifton calls it loading the language, manipulating the language. And the language of the totalist environment is characterized by the so-called thought-terminating cliche. This prevents you from thinking. This means that when someone says, hold on, but logically and biologically and genetically, this is not trans women are women. It's not about thinking. It's not about logic. It's about shutting down discussion so you don't think. So he says the most far-reaching and complex of human problems are compressed into brief, highly reductive, definitive-sounding phrases that are easily memorized and easily expressed. Eat the bugs, bigot, right? Silence is violence, okay? Speech is violence, but silence is violence. Yeah, they make lots of sense. Does this make sense so far? Flatten the curve, trust the science. 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Exactly, Michelle. Trust the science, flatten the curve. Understand, yeah, these are the bumper sticker philosophy, really, bumper sticker science that is meaningless. The polar bears are dying out, right? Exactly. Cisgendered. Yes, exactly. Right, so Mandeans are also Gnostics, Connor. Yeah, Mandeans are also Gnostic. Manichaeans go back a little further than that. So the consequences are clear. Man is entirely subordinated to doctrine, okay? And the underlying assumption is that doctrine, including its mythological elements, is the most valid thing in the end, more real and truthful than any other characteristic of the human experience. So even if it's made up garbage, right? Even if it's completely invented garbage, that ideology, even if it's entirely mythical, is more important than reality. Understand, this overrides reality. This is the threat. It is literal mind control. It is rejection of the external world in favor of an invented reality, a myth, really. A doctrine that's Manichaean at its core. Manichaean, again, now you're talking about something that is Gnostic, right? This is Gnostic Manichaean. That's quite scary. So it's established in terms of the contraposition or the contrast or the conflict between pure and impure. Remember, there's no forgiveness in the system, right? There's only subjugation. There's only submission. You will submit. Islam. There's no forgiveness here, right? Established in terms of the contraposition between pure and impure, it implies that existence is only reserved for those who opt for being pure. You have to be one of the pure or you have to die. Calvinism too. Think about that, this contrast. If you're not one of the pure, if you're not one of the elect, you are going to suffer and die. It's simple as that. The rest do not exist, and if taken to an extreme, then physically they should not be allowed to exist. That's the jihad. Because you won't submit to Allah, die. This is the thought that there is only one path for true existence. There's only my way or the highway, right? You follow Islam or that's it. And these characteristics, you have to add a tendency to construct a micro-society. So what they says here is, there's a tendency among totalistic movements to create a small society within the larger system, a parallel society. Now, for those of you in Germany, those of you in France, in Holland, and I've been to Holland and other places, you know that there are these parallel Muslim societies that grow up, okay? Like, I saw someone ask, very funny, they said, what stops you from moving to Germany? And someone answered, I don't speak Turkish. Right? So, you know that there's a problem. You've got societies that form, black society that forms in a very insular fashion. They separate themselves from the evil white people or the evil Europeans or whatever, or the evil Christians, and they form their own parallel society. And that's a micro society. So they create a small society within the larger system. And that's like an infection. It's like a parasite. It gets in. And once it's in, it starts to grow, right? So this micro-society takes charge and establishes the model for a new order. So these Muslim societies that are inside of London and other places, they eventually take over. Parallelgesellschaft, genau, Rotom Elektrik. Das ist eine Parallelgesellschaft, yeah. It's a parallel society, right? And so they establish a new moral order, right? In contradistinction to the existing culture. And it's influenced by their totalistic ideology. So hopefully you can see where these guys are coming from. Dearborn, Michigan, exactly, Roseanne. Right? Essentially, they aim to shape their own community or group according to their strict beliefs and principles. They're not there to integrate. They're not going to integrate. They don't want to integrate. They hate you. Bear that in mind. They actually hate you, potentially disregarding or challenging the wider societal norms and structures. That's why they suddenly have Sharia courts. That's why they're out there slapping women, okay, and attacking women, harassing women that don't dress according to Muslim standards in London. You understand the problem, right? Now he speaks of the Muslim Brotherhood. He identifies, now don't forget, Hamas is a wing of the Muslim Brotherhood. Hamas is officially part of the Muslim Brotherhood. They are the Muslim Brotherhood in Palestine. Hamas is a theocratic Muslim political religion, right? So they want to establish a mediation between groups of leaders and their respective society in a clearly differentiated way, with common goals, but with respect to the totalist parties in cases that are fascisms and the Soviet model. So they'll have a leadership, that's why they have the scholars, and they will mediate with the other culture, but they will establish very tight control. They know who's in charge of that group. These people are the leadership. They will mediate with the government, and they will take over. Right? It is perhaps the characteristic that most clearly distinguishes the vertically oriented power structure in classic totalitarian systems from horizontally vectored schemes of action used by totalists. This is distributed. If you're looking at warfare, you're looking at distributed warfare, guerrilla warfare. So this is not a top-down hierarchical military approach. This is distributed widely. This is broad and deep rather than top-down. Right? So this is more bottom-up. Bottom-up and spread sideways. And it repeats. So it's a low structure, but it's a very broad structure. And it's like an infection. It's like cancer. So the distinction, right? In classical totalitarian systems like fascism and the Soviet model, the power structure is vertically oriented, right? So this means there's a very clear hierarchy, right? From the top, the leader on top, and there's an authority structure with leaders at the top exercising control over society. That's your central control, right? So the totalist party serves as a mediator between these leaders and the rest of society. So you've got your political leaders who will have strong political control over the military, over the judiciary, etc. And the totalist leaders who are the ones who stir up. Remember, Barack Obama and his community organizing, the community organizers. Well, the community organizers are the leadership that interface with the government. And when they get their orders from the government, they will distribute that throughout the society and get the marching orders going. Does that make sense? Examples of this include the Communist Party and the Soviet Union, the Nazi Party in Germany, right? But totalistic movements, whether manifested within a totalitarian framework like China or Cuba, or autonomously like Islamists, right? Or I hate that term, but Muslims in London, Muslims in France, Muslims in Belgium, Muslims in Holland, right? Muslims in Germany, right? This is a autonomous framework, right? They're operating in cells. Think of it that way. They're operating in cells. They utilize horizontally vectored schemes of action. So here, power and influence are spread across different groups and organizations. The Muslim Brotherhood has dozens of organizations, dozens of them. And they've started and stopped, started up, closed down, started up, closed down, hundreds of organizations, like starting with the Muslim Students Association or something. The Muslim Students Association, the MSA, back in the 60s, and there have been hundreds of iterations of this. Once they get caught out, they shut down, they start a new company. That's all they do. And this is, so they have small cells scattered everywhere, thousands of them probably, right? So they are spread across society, and there may not be a fixed or centralized authority structure. That is fourth generation warfare, right? Now you're talking about fourth generation warfare. And the totalistic influences shape and guide the actions and goals of these movements. So they're given a goal: defeat the white people, take their stuff, okay? That's the general goal. They operate under the umbrella of the general goal. And what happens is how they do it within their particular community, within their context, within their space is up to them, as long as they fulfill the general agenda. So in other words, all of them are going to start calling you all racists because they're going to make you feel bad. Then you've got to tear down your statues, and then you've got to build more mosques and tear down your churches because that's not inclusive. To understand, whatever they do, it all heads in the same direction. It all converges on the same point. Hopefully that makes sense. Does this make it clear so far? Does this make logical sense? Being that this is a paper from one of the most highly qualified scholars in the world on this topic, or shall we say a paper derived from two of the best minds in the world on this particular topic. Does this make logical sense to you? Nobody has mentioned enough about the 20 different and contradictory Qurans they have. Yeah, but that's not this topic, Connor. I always thought the black market weapon sellers help these different terrorists meet. Yeah, probably they do. Search for Matthias Kunzel, Jeffrey Harf, Klaus Michael Malman. Okay, who are those people? Michelle says, I worked for a female Muslim psychiatrist. She hated Americans but wanted the freedoms that her husband allows her. Yeah. I saw a video where Muslims said they took over this big church in England. What a shame. Yeah, it's sad. Okay, now, he says here, how did totalism emerge? Where does it come from? We're about halfway, right? And he says, look for the roots in the terrain of psychology. Undoubtedly, a necessary area in which to analyze the mechanisms, okay, how it gets into your brain. But you can look in the field of political and sociological history. Well, sociology is interesting because woke got into the universities through sociology, right? They created sociology as a way to spread atheism. The totalist mentality does not arise spontaneously free of external variables. So it has to be imposed. It's not a natural state, right? So let me see. Okay, so what you have is here, in his Race and History, Levi Strauss reminds us all that primitive societies believe themselves to be the authentic carriers of the truly human, with a tendency to define themselves in one way or another as the true men, right? So notice, you are a kafir, right? And the Muslims are the true humans, the true Christians. They are the blessed of God, right? And everyone else is a kafir. And notice it says here, that is something that is part of primitive societies, primitive thinking, right? They believe this, right? And for instance, the Zapotec Indians in Mexico, those who tell the truth, that's a name they give themselves, okay? So what is Islam called? The religion of truth, the Deen al-Haq, the religion of truth, right? So this posture also legitimizes the use of violence because the other is inferior or degenerate. What do Muslims say? You guys are degenerate. You do all the gay. Like, no, we don't. It's not part of the Christian religion. It's a corruption of it. It's a violation of it. Okay, those are the laws of those people that don't respect the Christian religion or the morals. Right? So understand, but because you're inferior, because you're degenerate, you get the love from the Muslims. Do you see where this idea comes from? And of course, it means they can use violence on you because you're unclean. Yeah. So martyrdom is overrated. Yeah. Okay, so Roseanne, Father Attila told me martyrdom is overrated. How does someone representing Jesus Christ think that? Yeah, well, ask yourself. Okay, so belief in commandments and rituals derived from it create a space in which strict compliance, well, Muslims have to strictly comply with the Sharia, right? When they can, they have to be as strict as possible, and the best Muslims are the most strict ones, right? And what happens when you are strict? Well, superiority. Separate your garbage into the plastic and the metals and the organic and the paper and the regular. Well, that's strict compliance. That's religious rules. And yeah, that's a story for another day. But yeah, that's what you do. You see, I follow the religion of separating my garbage, right? Sharia is totalitarian. It's also totalist. Pigs can fly. All right. So now, and notice he mentions here again a Manichaean belief system, according to which it is possible to design a project of power construction in a monopolistic regime which excludes all opponents. That's why they have to talk about inclusion, because really they want to exclude. They've got to lie, right? They've got to turn it upside down. They have to invert the truth. Totalism is the reign of the purists, of Islam's true believers. Now the guy actually explicitly talks about Islam. He brings up Islam as the example. Totalism is the reign of the purists. This is your Wahhabists, the pure Muslims, of the Cuban Revolution's fighters, of the Red Guards in Mao's China, right? Like I said, this was a publication version, so there are some errors and some weirdness in the language, and but yeah, I didn't. So, and then of course, so you're a patriot. You accept these beliefs. Hi, Dr. Gemmel. Well, go back to the beginning and play it at 1.75, right? So, conspiracy, yeah. Let's see. Okay, so you're a patriot if you accept the ideology without question, right? It says here, like an octopus, it spreads out its tentacles in order to control and transform society in accordance with the needs of purity. When he says purism, he just means purity, right? So totalist movements extend their influence, right? Their control and their transformative power. What did Barack Obama say? We are going to transform America. I'm going to transform the country. He didn't say How exactly did he? Well, he didn't like the country. He was going to change it. Understand? We're going to transform the country. Well, transform. Understand? Do you understand the idea, where it comes from? This is a totalitarian cultist mindset. So the aim of this ideological construction is to shape society in alignment with the strict principles of purity upheld by the totalistic movement. It's ideological. It is religious, right? So it is a religious movement. Must be opposed on that basis. Build back better. Exactly, Michael Lawler. Yeah. The implication is that the totalist ideology seeks to permeate and control all spheres of society, exerting influence to achieve its goals. So notice he states here, the doctor states here, they will utilize coercion of the masses, right, as a projection of an active minority, secure in their legitimacy in imposing their will. Now hold on. How many people actually like people pouring paint on paintings in the Louvre, right? You've got like 5 or 10 gay, lesbian, purple-haired freaks, right? 20 years old, rich, bored, and stupid, going into art museums, throwing paint on paintings, right? Gluing themselves to paintings, gluing themselves to cars, gluing themselves to floors, gluing themselves to fences, all right? Blocking highways. So notice here, but this is government permission to coerce the masses by an active minority who are secure in knowing they're not going to be arrested, and they're allowed to impose their will. Why? Because it serves the will of the government. Understand? So hopefully this explains what we're seeing in the world today. All right. So to achieve this goal, the other elements that are listed by R.J. Lifton are converted into technical preconditions. The control of the mass media by these active minorities is a necessary and indispensable requirement to effectively exercise a monopoly over social communications that also guarantee a flourishing of the ideology. So they need control of the media. Well, so don't complain. That's why Disney's gone woke, and I hope they go broke, right? Because they all need to crash down, and we need to start fresh with clean media, right? That's why Marvel, right? That's why the DCU has all gone broke, because they've all adopted woke. Okay? So with the idea in mind of immunizing these elements from the sort of debate and criticism common in a pluralistic society. So if you had a society that had multiple options, it's going to want to discuss the merits of these options. The problem is they don't want that. So they've got to control the media. They've got to disallow. They have to censor. They have to silence. They have to deplatform. Now you're seeing why and what they're doing. It's a very clear psychological strategy by a cult movement that has political aims or supports the aims of those in political power. Right? It is through this process that a political religion is consolidated. A political religion is created. The ideology acquires the rigidity of religious dogma. It is religious dogma. The science is settled, God damn it. All right? Right. So, and to assure the exclusion and marginalization of dissidents. So they will utilize their control to exclude and marginalize dissidents. We are dissidents. I think if you're on this channel, you are a dissident. And they're going to try and exclude and marginalize you, right? Which is the opposite of inclusion, because you aren't including them and their craziness. Right, so being part of a small standard group is in our brains. Brings a type of security to our head. Yep. A new planetarian human being has been the green activist or a common way of thinking. Yep, that's just creating the new perfect man, right? We've got the Dunbar number because humans, we can... Within human society, we have the ability to create small communities of up to about 150 people. Beyond that, we need a new kind, a new method of social governance, right? It's one thing to have like libertarians or lolbitarians. They like small groups, and that's fine, up to 150 or so. Beyond that number, you need to start creating a national government, and managing that is a completely different thing, right? But so we have this idea of small groups. So that's definitely part of an agrarian culture. It's part of a more primitive culture, a farming culture. It is not something suitable to the creation and maintenance of an actual nation state. James Lindsay, Conceptual James, has a good series on new normals, negating the real. Yeah, it's brilliant. I've listened to it twice, maybe 3 times. If anyone would like to drop any super chats, you're welcome. Thank you for mentioning that, Lilo Main. If anyone enjoys this, if you get any value out of it, please do support the channel. Let me see why people don't worship God. They will worship politics or sports or something else. Yeah, they're given these, well, of course. How far we have come from the protectorate and the Senate to serve the people. Yes. Paralysis by analysis says, just like any woke group in the minority, Islamic voices demand tolerance from differing belief systems. Exactly. And when they're in the majority, differing belief systems will not be tolerated. Correct. Yes. Okay. It is not just a question, let me check the time, it is not just a question of adhering to ideas, but you must follow the codes of conduct and the manipulated version of reality. So he speaks of the manipulated version of reality and history. Now look, I've said this before and I'll say this again, it might annoy people, but the Protestant version of Catholic history is just trash, right? Yes, there was an ad break again, I noticed that. So, yeah, so there was a... Also, so looking at the Protestant view of Catholic history is completely false. It's like 99% wrong, right? Then when you look at, obviously, how history is presented in communist society. Then when you look at how, for instance, Eastern Orthodox, my discussions with many Eastern Orthodox with their history of the Catholic Church is also just so much fantasy, right? Is it subscribers only chat? I wonder. Okay, so... okay, I'll check it, the settings, because sometimes YouTube by default adds it and I've got to disable it. Okay, so those who do not participate or partake can expect banishment and annihilation, right? So if you're not part of this group, right, they will throw you out of the group, they will deplatform you, they will exclude you, or they will kill you, right? That's what they're saying. So not a single door is left open through which an individual can maintain freedom and independence given the overwhelming predominance of the purist community. So it doesn't mean there's more of them, it just means they have control, right? So absolute sincerity is demanded if you want to be accepted, and the totalistic medium traces a radical distinction between the community and those outside of it. Very strongly us versus them, right? And they are the believers who have a right to exist, and those who have a different view of the world who do not have a right to exist. All right, so totalitarianism and totalism coincide in a number of places in their origins as social movements that end up distinguishing the pure and the impure. All right, and what they want to create is a homogenized society in whose social and political life all divisions are erased. So that's why in the Mao, you all wore the same clothes. You've seen lots of dystopian movies of the future. Everyone just gets the same clothes. Everyone dresses the same. Everyone eats the same. Everyone is equal. Right? Everyone's equal. That's equity. Understand? Equality is equality of opportunity. But we're not all equal as individuals. Not all of us run the same speed. But equity means that when you run the race, everybody finishes at the same time. That's equity. And that's what you've got here. All divisions are erased. Equity is a cult idea. And that's part of the totalist movement. Right? They don't distinguish. Yeah. So let me see here. Now, in totalism, the principal factor is the configuration of a new mentality resulting from horizontal pressures emanating from the heart of society. This is a bottom-up movement. They go into the community and they start activism, right? These are activists. So this is not necessarily imposed from the government, right? But this is now imposed from the top down, and the government just doesn't oppose it. This does not exclude the possibility that the same forces act to support a government regime that is dictatorial. They can be acting on behalf of a dictatorial government, right? Developing in its center a totalistic dimension. So totalism and totalitarianism can cooperate beautifully hand in hand. Now, they mentioned Islam as a closed model, right? And looking at the 1989 edition of Mao's book, he says, the search for absolute belief systems or totalisms has produced something close to an epidemic of political and religious fundamentalism, with movements characterized by the fusion of sacred texts that contain absolute truths for all, right? You will accept this, okay? You will believe this. And the science is settled. You know, if you don't take the jab, you're going to kill Granny. Why are you killing Granny? That's exactly the kind of thing, right? So, and the mission to force obedience upon everybody, accompanied by the adoption of violent measures against designated enemies of the truth. The J6s, that was the insurrection. It's an insurrection. So we have to, these are enemies and they are not believers and they must be punished. And I think we can see this. This is very much a description of the psychological issues and the political issues that plague us in the world today. And fundamentalism can bring about the most extreme experiences inspired by totalism, the complete immersion of the ego in all or nothing based ideological and behavioral mechanisms. So those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. Well, if they're going to kill all the trans, you have to stop them, right? If your car or your meat, your cow is going to kill the world, we have to kill the cows. We have to stop the farmers. We have to stop you from having meat. We have to stop you from flying. You're going to kill Granny. We have to do something about you. You're going to kill Granny. You're a murderer. You've been prejudged. You've been condemned. You've been judged and condemned, and that's it. And there's nothing you can do about it. Understand, if they can make you believe stupid things, look at the new trans movement where you've got all of these trans shooters, these mass shooters, right? Going to schools, killing 10 people, whatever the case is, right? Because they've made them believe absurdities, and thus they can make them commit atrocities. So that's the power of propaganda, of manipulation, and the dangers of unquestioning belief. Now, Voltaire is supposed to have said this, but there's no definitive proof that he's the guy that said this. Voltaire also said a lot of very stupid things. God, I've covered him in my atheism series. The man's an idiot. I have no idea why it's like we've run out of people to respect, that we've got to take time to laud and honor idiots like Voltaire. So, they speak of the rise of religious fundamentalism. You've got Islam, okay? And what you've got is that Arab nationalism has been a disaster. I mean, what does Palestine manufacture except violence and bullets and bombs, right? So you've got the Muslim elite reacted to Western dominance, and they wanted to reaffirm their identity because obviously you feel inferior because of Western dominance. And whose ideological model, okay, so the Muslim Brotherhood established this whole idea in 1928, 29. Right? And so what they mean here is this is jealousy and spite to tear you down for being better and for being more successful, right? You have to stop being good at what you do because, remember there was this really crazy push to stop white families should not read to their children because that is not inclusive to children who don't have their parents read to them because their parents are alcoholics, their parents beat them, their parents are black and don't care. And they're, so we can't have that. So white families, it's racist of you to read bedtime stories to your children at night. Do you remember that scene a couple of years ago where this became a thing? Well, it is jealousy and spite because you're doing the right thing. You're doing the good thing, right? So that is really what it is. It's the psychology of spite, right? Okay, so now they speak here of ordering the prescribed and prohibiting the reproachable. So this is commanding the right and forbidding the wrong. This is the single most important, the underlying fundamental dogma of Islam, right? This was the fundamental underlying teaching of Islam, that Muslims have to enforce the Sharia and prevent any violation of the Sharia, right? Now notice, it is not a type of law that can be altered or changed by human reason. It is independent of reason, right? Trans rights are human rights because trans women are women. Okay, fine. Right, so understand, but it's not reasonable. It cannot be changed by reason. It doesn't submit to reason. It is the truth that has been pushed down from on high, right? They have an exhaustive code of behavior, and this is a model for society. Well, tell me that they aren't trying to change society, not just Muslims wanting to change society to Sharia, but you've got the woke who want to gay all the things. You've seen this, right? And it's an anthropological attitude towards life. Each person has his or her place and specific function perfectly defined. They're going to stick you in a box. So there is no originality. You're a woman, barefoot in the kitchen, have babies, make lunch, shut up, make me a sandwich. That's the woman's role. That's the woman's position. Men, well, you've got more advantages, but you still have to go out and go do jihad and whatnot. But understand, you've got these very clear roles. So this is not about freedom. This is about everyone has to serve the state in the way that the state feels will best develop the state. So Lloyd the Jongh, it's the Jongh. Do you not believe in racism or believe that black equals bad? I don't think you were hearing me. I'm not sure you were listening very well, because last I checked, I'm from Africa, and I definitely am black. Pretty much sure about that. But I could be wrong. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm the wrong kind of black. That has been told to me. So, yeah. But black people are extremely racist. Black people are crazy racist, which is insane. All right? But they are. So, totalistic movements aim to provide comprehensive answers and solutions to various aspects of life. So they give you easy answers. They give you simple answers. Just do this. Follow these rules, right? Including social, cultural, economic, and personal dimensions. You want to save the world? Separate your garbage. You're good. You're a saint now, right? So the statement also highlights that a totalistic movement goes beyond being a mere set of ideas or principles. It is described as an anthropological attitude, meaning that it shapes how you perceive and engage with the world. It's mind control, in other words. So it influences your worldview, your values, your behaviors. It is mind control, right? As a consequence, you've got the idea of a virtuous city where everything is regulated according to the will of Allah. Now, the virtuous city, that comes from Plato. That's Plato's Politeia, Plato's Republic. And of course, Muslims took this. Why am I using blackface? I actually use logic, and logic leads me to think in a certain way. And look, I'll be blunt with you. Look, I've been very honest. I've not I've been very clear and blunt about a lot of things. I come from the black community. I don't come from wealthy parents. I don't come from the right side of the tracks. Okay? So don't mistake me for just making sure I'm black. Any racism in my community started from white. That is bullshit. Quicks, that is absolute bullshit. Blacks have been racist for a long time. That's nothing new. Right? So that's just blaming someone else. That's just finding someone else to blame so that black people don't look at the flaws and look at the problems in their own culture. When you look at black culture, coming from Africa as I do, tribes hate each other. Okay? The tribes don't go, there's my fellow black man. It's like, it's those fucking causers, we need to go kill them. Right? Understand, that is the approach. Right? The black tribes are not friends. They don't like each other. And if you're not part of them, for instance, blacks in Africa look at me and go, you are a bastard. You are not a real black. We're real blacks. We have dirty feet. We don't brush our teeth properly. We're tribal blacks. We come from proud tribal blacks. And you, Mr. de Jongh, you're a half black. Now, the fact is that these black people are from Central Africa. They migrated and invaded the territory known as South Africa. Right? They are Cameroonians, they're Nigerians, they are Tanzanians, and so on. They came down, they slaughtered the indigenous people of Southern Africa that happened to be my complexion, that look like me. Right? They slaughtered in a massive genocide over 2 million of the country's inhabitants, as far as I know. And of course, they don't admit to it because black people have different values, different morals. Right? African blacks are not as sophisticated and as morally developed as white people. That's quite blunt. Look up the Lifakani, the Diffakani. Hold on, I'll bring this up. So what you need to do is look up the movements called the Lifakani. You might see different spellings. You might have an E, you might have an I. Some will call it the Diffakani. You'll have different variations of it like this, or the Mfakani. You'll see different variations. Might be E, might be I, whatever. Okay? Look this up, right? So start with that. So when you look at Shaka Zulu, okay? His tribes, he fought against every tribe in sight, subjugated, killed the men, whatever it was who fought him, raped the women, had fun, took the kids, stuck them in his army, and went and then fought the next tribe, and eventually developed control. And between him and, I think it was not Dingiswayo, between him and, can't remember the name of the guy now, they murdered half the country. 50% of the population was wiped out. Do you know who saved the blacks in Southern Africa? The white people. The white people saved the blacks from the blacks. Who were these slave traders in Africa? The blacks. What were they doing? They were enslaving their own blacks. Why? Because it's not my tribe. F those people. They're not my tribe. So American black people have told me, Lloyd, I am more African than you because I'm blacker than you. My response to that, excuse my French, is go fuck yourselves. Okay? You're Americans. You know dick about Africa. I was born in Africa. I am African. You guys are pretending. F off. Right, moving on. So, this virtuous city idea, this is a philosophy that has entered into Islam through Plato. but shall we say it's a misrepresentation of Plato, but it's or corruption or an Islamization of the idea of the perfect city, because Plato said you need a perfect city where you can impose the rules and you can create a perfect society. Okay, so what you've got is this idea of the caliphate comes out of Platonic philosophy, right? So, okay, so now let's go on. So the broad brushstrokes of totalism refined with more precision, right? So what you've got is Islam is a very highly refined system of totalism. It's not as crude as woke necessarily. It's very sophisticated because it's a fusion of the politics. It's a fusion of the social control. It's a fusion of the propaganda. It's a very, very tightly controlled method. All right, so it is not inconsequential that in Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Nigeria, the invocation of Hisbah, or the call of organizations to promote virtue and prohibit vice, right, blossom in the shadows of Islamism, encouraged by the myth of the primordial virtuous society of the pious ancestors, the Sahaba in the times of the Prophet and his immediate followers. So that's Salafism. So the Salafi are going to be the core of the totalists within Islam, who are the totalitarians. So now you've got this merger, the syncretism of the totalitarians and the totalists. Okay, so what's hilarious is when African Americans claim that Christianity is a white man's religion and that Islam is for the black. I know, and the Muslims were the ones that were enslaving, capturing, and selling the black slaves. It's insanity. And then Muhammad had no respect for black people either. So the further we go into history, the more we find tribal slavery societies. How do you think megaliths have been erected? Yeah, they're only bones and cairns of men, and they are highly inbred. Yeah, well. So let me see. So faced with Western domination in the political, economic, and cultural sectors, the founder of the Muslim Brotherhood, Hassan al-Banna, refreshed the fundamentalist precepts and laid down the framework of a perfect Islamic order. Now, you have to note here, Hassan al-Banna, who founded the Muslim Brotherhood in 28, has a 100-year plan. In 2028, they are going to, that's 4 years from now, 5 years from now, 5 years. Yeah, 4.5 years, whatever. From now, in 2028, they are going to take over America. They're going to destroy the US and take over its government. So as an existing country, Western democracy, they will enslave the US under their control. And you're seeing now that they are agitating, and this is happening in Europe. This is not just the US they're after, but they have a plan, a 100-year plan from 1928 to 2028. And they intend to. So understand, Hassan al-Banna is not his real name. This is a name he adopted. It means the builder. The builder meaning Freemason. He's a known Freemason. Al-Banna, Hassan al-Banna, he's building the perfect society. Understand, he is a Freemason. He's well known to be a Freemason. That's acknowledged. So for them, it's light against darkness. And the key piece would be what Lifton designated as the control of the media. All forms of social communication, literary genre, or leisure activity that contradicted religious criteria have to be eliminated. Now notice, you've got Christian things have to be taken out of schools, right? If you find the parallels to the woke, don't just think of Islam, find parallels in the woke that we're seeing, in the Marxist woke that we are seeing today. The greatest tragedy in so many humans is susceptible to mind control programming. Yeah, but this is so pervasive. It's everywhere, right? What's Michael saying that's educational? Let's see. My truth isn't your truth, according to many modern scholars. Exactly. So there is no truth. There can be no truth. That's incoherent to say my truth. Well, then what's truth? I mean, that's, yeah. Let me see. Yeah, let me see if I've missed anything. Nazi slaughtering Jews isn't considered white-on-white genocide. I know, it's crazy stuff. But those were atheist Darwinists, for the most part, doing the killing, so that's okay. Just like the French Revolution. You look at the French Revolution, those were atheists killing Christians in the name of atheism. It was a genocide. It was atrocity like you will not believe. It's disgusting. But yeah, atheists don't like to talk about that. Yeah, black tribes did sell other black tribes into slavery. And of course, blacks don't like that little story. They don't like that fact. If you look at the American slave trade, it lasted for something like 84 years. And something like between 350,000 and 500,000 slaves went to North America, including Canada. Now you've got over 30 million, you've got like 35 million blacks in North America today, from 300,000, right? So from 300,000 blacks you have, which is not a genocide, last I checked. When the number go up, it's not a genocide. The number's supposed to go down. But when you look in South Africa, when the invading Nguni tribes, right, from Central Africa, when they slaughtered and nearly wiped out the indigenous blacks in South Africa, or the brown people, right, when they wiped them out, those people were displaced. They were pushed into the worst regions, like the Bushmen, the San, the Khoi, the Hottentot. They were pushed into the worst regions, in many cases pushed out of the country. Do you think the blacks ever apologize? Let me tell you bluntly, black morality, black culture is very different to white culture. It never apologizes. It never admits wrong. It is not going to. It is going to always blame someone else. That is black culture. Maybe that does not describe every black person, but that is black culture. That is, you don't need everyone to be a psychopath to have a bunch of people dead by a psychopath. You don't need everyone in a room to be a school shooter to have a school shooter ruin your day. Understand? You don't need everybody. You just a few, and there's enough. There are enough. If you're white, they hate you. Trust me. Okay? When I sit in taxis here in Poland, let's just say the conversations that some of those taxi drivers have with me, if you're white-skinned, they're not going to have that conversation with you. Trust me on that. The things they tell me and the things they don't tell you, yeah, you'd be surprised. Moving on. Okay, so I'm going to try and finish this. We're nearly done, so let me try and finish. Right, so the Brotherhood, the Muslim Brotherhood is found, now remember, Hamas is Muslim Brotherhood. And look, I hope I don't offend anybody. I'm not trying to be, at least, I don't mean that I'm not saying that I'm hoping that the facts that I present don't offend anyone. I know they're going to offend people, but sometimes I get really ticked off. Remember, when I say I'm Christian, sure, I was raised Christian. I believe in Christianity as the true faith. However, I come at this as someone who, my job was to prevent people from dying. My job was to make sure that person A didn't kill person B. Person A in most of my life was generally Muslim, right? So, because that was my job. Muslims, those are the problem. The jihadis are the problem. The Muslims that paid us to do the work that we did, they were quite open about it, right? But you come to the West and you say, those guys are jihadis, it's like, you bigot. Like, no, you go to the culture and they'll be very honest and very open about it. That's what we were paid for, right? When governments were paying my company, right, for me to go out at $20,000 a day, right? $20,000 a day for me to go do some work, to go do an assessment, do a survey, do whatever the heck it is I do. Understand, they're paying for a reason, because they don't want their nice thing to blow up. So understand, these companies, these governments were very, very serious. They understand the scope of the problem. Why do you think Egypt has 2 crazy walls between them and Gaza? They know something we don't. All right, so but yeah, I mean, I just hope you're not offended when I say by me just losing my my calm demeanor and telling people to F off, because man, that really gets to me. When black people start going on the we was kangs thing, it's like, man, you are so deluded. You are so deluded. That annoys me, this fantasy idea that exists in the black community, I'm not a fan of. The divisiveness, I don't like that. Okay, so it is the principle of the sacred science, right? Let's go on here. There's not a single word in the faith of the Muslim Brotherhood that does not come directly from the Book of Allah and the sayings of his Prophet in the spirit of authentic Islam. So it is a totalitarian religious philosophy. Yeah, ANC is, let's not talk about that. It is the principle of sacred science meant to solve all of life's problems, right? To inspire mystical manipulation in the sense of simplifying and reducing the complexity of real life into a series of norms derived from the message. And if you guys have been watching The Critical Drinker at all, you'll know all about the message. If you've watched anything from Disney, you know about the message, right? So in other words, they've got the message, they've got the rules. They just follow these rules, the Sharia of the woke, and everything will be fine. And all it causes is chaos. All right, so they quote from sacred texts. Now, of course, if they don't have they've got Karl Marx as a sacred text, okay? They've got some book written by some crazy feminist as their sacred text, all right? Now, notice it says here, they repeat the same cliches over and over in accordance with a Manichaean vision of reality. That's a black and white view of us versus them, enemy versus good, we good, they bad. Understand, this is a serious problem. It is going to have serious outcomes. In my country, you're seeing the most dangerous occupation in South Africa is being a farmer. Well, it means you're white and you stole land. Okay, so growing food to feed people is a crime, according to these idiots. And farmers have been killed in droves. Understand? This is another genocide that's just not discussed. Who's doing it? Black people, right? Why? Because good reasons, I guess. All right. So now you're talking about Gnosticism. Again, we come to Gnosticism, which is satanic, which is evil. Okay. So the characteristics that Lifton speaks of, right, are fulfilled to the letter. Those are the 8 psychological themes that are part and parcel of cults and totalitarian movements. And he says within Islam, these are fulfilled to the letter and logically. And the way towards a recuperated Islamic social order is not a peaceful one, but one that requires jihad. So these 8 themes must be deployed using violence to create the perfect society. What did Marx want? Marx's idea of socialist revolution is violence to create the perfect society. Same thing, right? Same thing, just different culture. So under Marx, you've got German / whatever it was, Russian characteristics, and Islam has just got Middle Eastern characteristics. Same nonsense, just wearing the clothes of the region, right? They're going to deny the Sharia left and right, because the Sharia is embarrassing. It's the soft underbelly. It is too clear. It is too obvious. They are going to deny the Sharia all over. Ask them, show me where in the Quran I can hold a wedding. Show me the instruction in the Quran for holding a wedding. Show me the names of all of Muhammad's wives in the Quran. Show me how to do the prayers. Okay? Not that it says there are prayers, but show me how to do the prayers. Show me how to do the Hajj. Tell me all about the rules of zakat from the Quran. It's not in there, it's in the Sharia. You want to see 100 pages of instructions of how to do a Muslim wedding? It's in the Sharia. There's nothing in the Quran. There's like 1 or 2 paragraphs at best, 1 or 2 verses. Right, so understand. What about the amputation of hands? Well, there's like 50 pages in the Sharia that explain in detail how to do it. And then you can ask them, okay, so the Sharia is false. It doesn't exist. It's wrong. Okay, let's read through this and explain to me where and how this instruction on how to the prayer or how to do a wedding. Show me how this is wrong and not Muslim. It is 100% correct. It's 100% Muslim. They're lying to you, and they're going to lie. Well, because the Sharia says lying is obligatory for Muslims. It is an obligatory duty. They have to lie to you. And they have to lie to themselves too. So the way to create the perfect society is violence. And the Muslim Brotherhood's laws are aimed at a collective subject, the Ummah. It's basically collectivist. It is not communist in that sense. It is collectivist, outside of which there is no salvation. It's religious and there's no salvation outside of that. I believe that the flag of Islam should dominate. This is the Muslim Brotherhood credo. The flag of Islam should dominate humanity, and the obligation of all Muslims, not some Muslims, consists in educating the world in accordance with the rules of Islam. So yeah, the woke are on a mission. You understand? The woke are on a mission, the Muslims are on a mission. They're on the same kind of mission, right? And again, you are the enemy. Understand? You have to start thinking you are the enemy. And the totalist program elaborated by Hassan al-Banna, right? And so he was the extremist, and he apparently has these moderates, al-Qaradawi, right? And so on. Al-Qaradawi is not as moderate as he makes out. We all know that though, right? But understand, so you've got these frontmen who try to be softer, who try to mediate the message, but yet they're still pushing, they're fronting for the crazies in the back. Quran-only Muslims are lying to you, because to be a Quran-only, look on Islam QA, look at some of the other fatwa sites like that, Islam QA. They'll tell you Quran-only Muslims are apostates. For someone to deny the Sunnah is wahi, it is revelation. So therefore the Sunnah is as valid as the Quran. In some cases, even more so, right? Even more so because it contains more details that the Quran lacks. It explains things and provides context that the Quran does not have. So in some cases, it's even more important than a Muslim who denies this. And they will deny it out of shame, out of embarrassment, or to not lose an argument. So yeah, they are not just being evasive, they're being bluntly dishonest. So yeah. Now, Hassan al-Banna, remember, al-Banna is the builder. This is not his real name. Builder is Freemason. He was a known Freemason, right? Hassan al-Banna. And remember, he founded the Muslim Brotherhood, and the Muslim Brotherhood is Hamas. Hamas is the Muslim Brotherhood, right? And he says that propaganda is a major tool that they will use. So in the area of mystical manipulation, right, they're going to utilize the mystical manipulation. I discussed that in my 8 Principles of Totalitarianism video. Right, and in the imposition of its own symbolism. So they will impose their own symbolism. Like, for instance, making women wear the burqa in the Western countries. They're imposing their symbolism. They're putting it in your face, right? So, for instance, the demand that Muslim women dress according to norms laid down in the Quran or whatever, or in the Hadiths. Nearly done. So, the myth of the pious ancestors. They've got to talk about a mythical past. The Romans were transgender too, don't you know that? okay? Which we've heard, which we've actually seen. Cleopatra was black, right? We've heard that nonsense as well. Understand? They've got to appeal to some kind of, we was kings, right? They have to appeal to some kind of fake history. The order of purity, represented by the Ummah of believers, finds in the golden age of the Prophet and his followers the basis for reconstruction. So they have to appeal to a fake history and then try to recreate that fake history. They're trying to give it a historical backing, a historical validity that it lacks. They're trying to take it out of the realm of myth and fantasy and trying to create something that's real, but it's completely fake. It's a lie. It's a myth that's a lie, and a history that's a lie. It's a narrative that's a lie. And all the uses, okay, so all the values in society, right? So communication, the uses and values are subjugated to the sacred norm, otherwise known as the Sharia, or the woke Bible, or Karl Marx's Das Kapital, right? Capital, and so on. And notice they say punishments and jihad guarantee complete submission, right? So force and violence guarantees complete submission, or the exclusion of the impure within the Muslim space. So non-believers, apostates, hypocrites, all influenced by the West. So in other words, this is how they deal with dissenters within their own community, violence. We already know that, right? This is, I've covered this before in my videos, right? There's the escalation. I can't remember exactly what it's called. Yeah, as soon as I remember, oh, good grief. I can't remember exactly what, I've covered it extensively on my channel in the past. Within Islam, they've got, you first use words, then you use insults and harsh language, you use foul language, then you go to using slaps, you break things, and then you go to violence, and you bring weapons, and you bring friends, gang warfare, okay? So given this monopoly of ideas and prohibitions, there's no margin for freedom. And he says, as Moroccan fundamentalist Abdesalam Yassin warned, everyone is free to have their own ideas within the walls of their own home, but they should never be expressed outside if they are in any way contrary to the precepts of Islam. So in your own head, you can think what you like, but don't put it out in public, or there will be punishment, right? Because what you've said is a crime. So all of the influences of the West, its values, literature, music, its fashions and leisure, everything has to be eradicated. Think about it. They have to deconstruct everything. Muslims want to change everything, get rid of a lot of things, and the woke want to change everything, corrupt it. So these are two different ways of achieving the same goal. Religious discourse invades everything, covering all of society under a sacred blanket. That culminates with the exaltation of the Quran and the Prophet, so that's the Islamic context. Otherwise, everything turns gay. Everything turns trans. Understand? Remember, they said that the Bible is fake, and now even the kids are gay. Even 3-year-olds are gay. So, yeah, nearly done, guys. Okay, so the concept of sacredness is reinforced by the permanent evocation of the martyrs of jihad, right? And you've got repressive, so they're appealing to a perfect past, and these perfect saints who died for the movement. Repressive and punitive attitudes against all dissidents, so violence against any dissidents, until a homogeneous society is achieved that is subject to the laws of Islam. It is the ummah, the community, that counts, never the individual. So the ummah, the community, counts. Remember, ideology above people. The ideology doesn't care about people, right? So, and the Islamic utopia is a perfect totalism, and they actually identify Islam as exactly totalist. Conclusion, right? From an ample spectrum of diverse ideological positions, the concept of totalism permits an understanding of the political nature of movements that, propelled by a charismatic leader or by active minorities, very powerful active minorities. You don't need 90% of the people to become communists for them to take over the country. 2 or 3% is enough if they're motivated, right? And these active minorities are aimed at eliminating pluralism from society. So to define that, pluralism is the concept of ideology that recognizes and supports diversity. I don't mean the kind of DEI diversity. Coexistence and existence of multiple perspectives, beliefs, or values within a society. It is the acceptance and respect for the existence of differing opinions, ideologies, religions, cultures, and ways of life. However, at some point, you're going to have one standard. If you're a foreigner living in a foreign land, you should respect the culture of that land. So groups and interests in individuals are acknowledged. They're encouraged to live peacefully, get along, and not try to impose any of their ideas. But these people are not living to get along. They are trying to take over and impose their horrible ideas upon us, right? So what you have is they want to eliminate pluralism. They want to create a robot Borg society, and they want monopolistic dominance, and they want to create a homogenous social order in accordance with its doctrines. Everyone has to be gay. I don't know how you can have kids then, but okay. So they want to eliminate pluralism, and they said that the elimination of pluralism and of the groups and organizations that support it, so they need to wipe out anything that supports difference, right, is an indispensable requirement for the conquest of power. All dissident voices must be silenced, right? And it is the necessity to practice one type or another of violence. They will use violence to get rid of people who disagree with them. And the rejection of any rational argument that might assign compassion for the adversary. You cannot have sympathy for those Republicans, for those Christians. You cannot have compassion for those Israelis, those Jews, because they're evil. You have to use violence against them. Do you understand? We're seeing it in the world today. From this, we see the approximation of totalisms to the field of political religions. It is a political religion. And there's a two-way feedback. I mean, your Democratic Party, at least in my perspective, right? That's the leftist game plan. Yes, it becomes. So while it might be political on this level, but it's the true believer. They are true believers, and therefore, eventually they slide into belief. It becomes theological. It becomes religious for them. Whether or not it starts off as political, right? So it says here, it is a doctrine that has to impose itself over individual beliefs. Belief, ideology, doctrine, politics over people. Doesn't matter if it's all mythical, if it's false, right? If it kills people, but that's it. It does not care. So this is all done in the name of a community constituted by believers in an idea, a perfect idea, this horrible Gnostic idea that by definition separates the pure from the opponents, that's you. And being carriers of the impure, they threaten to contaminate the social whole, and thus they must be repressed. And that's the end of the document. That's it. So, yeah, what have you guys taken away from this? Have you learned anything valuable? Do you see now there's a logic behind the madness? The madness you see is logical. These are humans acting in very specific ways. Once we can create definition, once we can create clarity, use words to create very clear standards. Once we can define what this thing is, what it's made of, what its intent and purpose is, right? How it interacts with the world, with the psychology of the people that are doing these things, we can now make sense. And once you can understand it, you can deconstruct it. You can use their tools against them. You can utilize this whole leftist nonsense, their method of propaganda, their method of organizing, their method of speaking and disruption. You cannot use it against them because you understand them. So let me see. Don't forget transgenderism, surgery included, of course. Yeah, it isn't Vatican. So the SSPX, yeah, they're not in full communion with the Catholic Church. There's some questions I have there about that. So let's start with abortion. Yeah, safe and rare. Okay, abortion. Safe, legal, and rare. And now it's like, kill all the kids you can, man. Kill them all. Kill them all. And like, oh my God, we're having no kids. Why? I don't know. Let's import all of Africa into America because we have no kids. Why are we having no kids? I don't know why. Let's kill all the kids. Abortion's good. Yeah, from safe, legal, and rare to just murder every baby you can see. So yeah, thank you. So guys, that's it. Hopefully you guys have learned something of value. Hopefully you've taken something away. Yeah. This stuff does make me angry. I have to read a lot of things that make me very upset, and I've got to listen to a lot of nonsense by people that really should know better if they spend 5 minutes just doing a little bit of reading. Now, of course, they're trying to get rid of the US voter base. They're importing the replacements. Yeah, Betsy, I don't know. This document mentions them, but I really don't care. Honestly, it's like people ask me to do videos on halal. I don't care. Honestly, it just bores me to death. So, yeah, so guys, yeah, drop something in the comments later. Let me know what it is you took away, what you learned from this, and what suggestions you have for being able to deal with this. And again, I hope I didn't offend anyone with me getting a little angry, but yeah, I just, we have been patient, we've been kind, we've been polite with people that have crappy ideas, and we need to start calling spades spades. We need to start ridiculing, naming, and shaming. And when someone goes, Dad, I'm coming out. I'm now bi-gender, Dad. I'm two-spirit. Your dad shouldn't go, well, my daughter, that's really nice. He should say, you've been learning bullshit at university. That is made up crap. Give the kid a slap and tell her, get that shit out of your head. Go do the dishes and get your facts straight. While I'm throwing you out of the house without money. F off. At some point, you got to go, look, We should have nipped this in the bud, but we've been tolerant. We've let it happen, and it needs to stop. It really needs to stop. Okay, there comes a point. These slides. This is actually the document. This is actually the paper by. This is not slides. Totalitarianism and Totalism. This is a pre-publication copy that I was given. It still had errors in it. This was prior to editing and prior to final editing. It is available online. You can buy it. It's a couple of dollars, whatever. But this was rewritten for a book that was being published with a whole bunch of these articles. So I don't know if I can give it away because this was given to me. So tolerance is not silence or consent. Yeah, guys, we've been but guys, if you want to get the rest of my slides, go to my Ko-fi page. Links in many of my description boxes. And you'll be able to get the slides of most of my other talks there. Yeah, people are too afraid to speak the truth. You must speak the truth. Yeah, screen capping is your friend. Yeah. By the way, so I have a tool. Let me bring something up. Not that one. Let me do something here. Yeah, since you're asking about that, there's a tool that I use. So let me go to. I'm just going to go to a random website. Like I'm going to go to msn.com. I'm just going to pick on a random article. Okay, so when you go here, for instance, this article, I've got a tool that I use. This is, it's called OCR Image Reader. So when I want to do something, I'll just drag over this, right? I'll select it, and I'm using best accuracy. And once it's done, I'll say copy text, and then I'll paste the text, and there it is. So I use a tool like this to capture text from web pages when I'm using this. So this is called OCR. OCR Image Reader, whatever it was. So we find it. OCR Image Reader. Yeah, OCR Image Reader is the name of it. So it'll capture that. That's one of the things that I use. And then I just paste it into documents, and I format it and dump it into an AI if I need to. And you can choose best accuracy and so on, and that's what I do. You can choose the accuracy levels. So guys, that's it from me. Thank you very much, Dr. Gemmell. I much appreciate it for the guy with a PhD. Coming from a knuckle dragger like me, that sometimes I get angry. I get really angry. I look at this stuff and it upsets me. Okay, but we need to understand the enemy. You need to know the enemy. They've studied you. You need to start studying them. You need to hit them where it hurts. We have a fight on our hands. We have a huge fight on our hand. Tell the truth. Okay. So guys, look, seriously, just call a spade a spade. We've got to stop being polite. You've got to stop tolerating this stuff. It needs to stop. Okay, so guys, thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening. I will see you guys in a couple of nights, and I'll take on the next topic. So everyone, good luck. Please use this information. Again, thanks for your time. Thanks for all the support. And conservatives don't organize very well. We don't organize. We just like have a live and let live strategy. The problem is it's your enemy. You need to call them your enemy. You have to see them as that, and you've got to fight for your values. Okay, good night, guys. God bless.